How's it going, everyone? A lot of discussion around Dragon Age the Veilguard right now. I am currently playing the game, and, you know, I will probably do another video, or I'll talk about it throughout the rest of the year, my final thoughts on the game. I'm nowhere near completing the game, so I don't think it's fair to assess the game right now. If you want my initial impressions, I think the game is okay. I don't think it's this stain on humanity or anything like that that some people want to portray Dragon Age the Veilguard as, and, you know, I've been critical about the game, some of the promotional elements and things of that nature, but I feel like Dragon Age the Veilguard is unfortunately one of those games that is so extremely divisive for obvious reasons that sometimes lost in the conversation is any form of nuance. You have to be, or I should rephrase it as, the most prominent discussion around Dragon Age the Veilguard seems to be on the opposite sides of extremes, and, you know, you can talk about that, whatever, but I want to talk a little bit about Metacritic responding to the review bombing of the game, go over some of the stats of the game as far as Steam concurrent player counts. People ask me, why do I cover this number? It's an interesting stat to go over, and I feel like there's a lot of things that are lost in discussion when people are looking at the Steam concurrent player count that I've talked about in other videos, but we'll talk about that at the end of this video. Right off the top, Dragon Age the Veilguard, much like a lot of other games, has featured a review bombing wave on Metacritic. Really, you guys, be critical about the game. Crap on the game if you want to crap on it. Metacritic review bombing, I don't think accomplishes anything. That's why I really do believe that the Steam reception is the best gauge of how the game is being received. And the game isn't overwhelmingly positive or anything like that. Mostly positive at 74% is the current Steam reception. That is not fantastic. A game like this that doesn't feature any online DRM, that doesn't have the EA launcher, and is of this notable IP, and is a very, very good port. This isn't a case like Dragon's Dogma 2, where Dragon's Dogma 2 was a very, very mediocre port, leading it to have a mixed reception. This is a game that, from a PC porting standpoint and outside of the game, the aspects of PC gaming that sometimes push people away, it's got all of those elements. I'm talking about not the game itself, the DRM, performance, things like that are on point, by most accounts on PC. But 74% positive isn't blowaway, but it's fine. It's mostly positive, which is like totally serviceable. However, on Metacritic, the user reception is a little bit different, listed at a 3.8 out of 10. For obvious reasons, it's getting completely crapped on. Obviously, a lot of people are leaving reviews that didn't even buy the game, didn't even play the game, and they're review bombing the game. Guys, be critical about the game, clown on the game for its dialogue, its writing, so on and so forth, but review bombing it on Metacritic, I really don't feel like accomplishes anything. It's honestly, like, why are you taking out the time to write up a review and just lower the Metacritic score? If you feel that passionately about it, you know, there's other forms of discussion to be had, but giving a game a 0 out of 10 score when you didn't play it, I feel like that's not fair, and Metacritic actually responded in regards to the backlash that Dragon Age the Veilguard got. We take online trust and safety very seriously across all of our sites, including Metacritic. Metacritic has a moderation system in place to track violations of our terms of use. Our team reviews each and every post of abuse, including all of the, you know, typical things you would expect, and if violations occur, the reviews are removed. There are other games that have been review bombed for various reasons, but Dragon Age Veilguard certainly one that has gotten it quite a lot. Looking at the game right now, yes, it has a generally unfavorable reception. The Metacritic score of 83, I mean, based on what I've played thus far, I can't give a definitive score on it, but 83 seems awfully, awfully high. I will, you know, give my more thorough thoughts on that 83 score once I'm finished with the game, or get to a point where I feel like I can give more of a final look at my personal subjective opinions about the game. But so far, I do think the writing is pretty mediocre. I actually think some of the gameplay combat is, like, totally fun. My expectations out of Dragon Age the Veilguard going into it, and I said this in previous videos, based on the fact that BioWare is kind of washed based on their recent releases, I was expecting, like, a Greedfall level RPG. Like, Greedfall, I'm not even trying to crap on Greedfall, but Greedfall is an RPG from Spiders that I think is a totally serviceable RPG. but obviously has some shortcomings, and that was about the level that I had my expectation for Dragon Age Veilguard, and if it hit that level, I would be like, okay, it's like fine, whatever, because I'm not expecting BioWare of old anymore. I'm not expecting the level of the original Mass Effect trilogy or Dragon Age Origins. I just don't think they're at that level anymore, and you know what, so far they've hit the Greedfall level, I'll say that. Right now, concurrent user count on Steam is 58,576. The peak for this game actually did go up in the weekend, which most people expect if you follow the Steam concurrent player count. That generally does happen. 89,000 was its peak. This number is being, like, taken, and people are taking it and portraying it the wildest ways imaginable. Unfortunately, context is lost in a lot of this. Look, I don't think it's fair to take Dragon Age the Veilguard's peak concurrent player count of 89,418 and compare it to Palworld, compare it to Baldur's Gate 3, compare it to Black Myth Wukong. For various reasons, those games hit a different stratosphere in terms of concurrent player counts. What games are relevant to compare it to? Well, I certainly don't think a lot of the rhetoric that outlets are pushing that it's the most played EA single player game of all time on Steam or of concurrent player counts is all that fair. Guys, EA pulled their games from Steam for like 10 years or 8 years from 2011 until 2019. So Dragon Age Inquisition, the last Dragon Age game, was not available on Steam. I believe Dragon Age 2 was, but it got pulled like very quickly after its initial release, and that's such a long time ago. I don't even think it's fair comparing this game to Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order on the base that, yes, that was available on Steam, but that required EA account linking, and on top of that, the PC gaming landscape, has changed so much in the last 3 to 4 years that comparing a game from 2019, I don't think is all that fair. If you want to look at EA games that this is comparable to, it would be the Dead Space remake, and the Dead Space remake, by all accounts, was a commercial failure. And I don't know if that's the best comparison point either, but the Dead Space remake did only peak at 31,000 concurrent players at the time of release, so it is doing much better than that. The game that a lot of people are throwing out to compare it to is Star Wars Jedi Survivor, another EA published game. Again, that game had EA account linking. That game was $70 instead of $60, and more importantly than anything, that game was legitimately one of the worst PC ports of all time. Bar none, it has a legit argument for the worst PC port of all time. I love Jedi Survivor. It's among my 2023 Game of the Years, but that game on PC was legitimately horrendous at launch, like an abomination, a true abomination, that using that as the comparison point is so laughable. It is so ridiculous. And, you know what, if you want to take the Dead Space remake and compare it to that, sure. Like, but Dead Space remake, remember, I don't think it was a commercial success. If you want to compare it to relevant games, I really do believe the best comparison point is taking a game from this year that fits a similar criteria, and I believe that Dragon's Dogma 2 is the best one. That's not even perfect though, because again, that game was also a mediocre PC port and it was $70, but in terms of an action RPG that was released this year, a sequel to what is deemed a relatively niche initial entry, and Dragon Age wasn't like a gigantic franchise, but Dragon's Dogma 2 did peak at 228,000 concurrent players if you want to compare it to that. I see people throwing out comparisons to a Space Marine 2, which I think is kind of fair. It's a totally different kind of game, but that peaked at 225,000. However, it is beating out games like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, Persona 3 Reload, which, to be fair, that was on Game Pass. It's beating out Metaphor ReFantazio, not to, like, totally crap on Sega here. It's beating out games like that, but those are Japanese titles. It's beating out the delayed release of Final Fantasy 16 on Steam. And then, obviously, there are titles like Elden Ring that peaked way higher when Shadow of the Erdtree came out, so there's not a lot of real solid comparison points I think you can draw to from games this year, but I do feel like Dogma 2 is one of the better ones, and again, it's far below that. That doesn't mean the game is an outright failure, and you also have to assess it from the fact that outside of all the controversy around the game, BioWare does not have the cachet that it once had. They have the perception of being completely washed, so you know, them peaking at a lower number than expected, that's not all too surprising, and you could look at a lot of different factors as to why that is. Is 89,000 an outright abomination and a failure? No. Is it a massive success? Also no. To me, how I perceive that number, and this is just my analysis of it, trying to be as fair as possible, I find it to be relatively underwhelming. Like, I would have thought that Dragon Age coming back, and if it was promoted the right way, if it was a game that was really gonna click with that RPG audience, especially on PC, where a game like this, PC gamers are gonna gravitate towards it. On top of that, no EA account linking, native release on Steam, $60, good PC port. I would have thought that 140 to 150k would have been the baseline of it being successful. How do I come up with that number? Really, it's just a number looking at some of the other successful releases as far as some of the other releases go, and I'm taking out games like Pal World and games like Black Myth Wukong that hit another stratosphere. That's not a fair comparison point. Baldur's Gate 3, not a fair comparison point. Look at games like Space Marine 2 that came out this year, or Dogma 2. I feel like those are more fair comparison points than games that just hit another level in terms of hitting that more mainstream zeitgeist that, you know, not every game can have the expectation to hit that, but I still do believe 89,000 is fairly underwhelming. That's barely beating Metaphor Refantasio, which is a JRPG, much smaller scale, and PC, again, not the place that JRPGs are primarily played. So that's my 2 cents on that. Take it however you want, and, you know, data is cool to look at, but I feel like this is one instance of this piece of data being taken and just, you gotta go to opposite ends of the extreme with this one, depending on where you stand. But I think it's a little underwhelming. Is it an outright objective failure? No, I don't think it's that either. But that'll do it for me. Let me know all of your thoughts in the comment section down below. I'm sure this video will get a lot of dislikes for whatever reason. Every time I upload a Dragon Age video, it's like my most disliked video when it comes to covering this game. But whatever, there's a lot of varying opinions, and honestly, I think, you know, the fact that this game is so polarizing is kind of an interesting observation outright as well, especially given that, didn't something pretty big happen yesterday? I don't know. What big happened in the United States yesterday? You guys tell me. But yeah, let me know all of your thoughts in the comment section down below. Thank you for watching, and goodbye. Hey guys, we hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, make sure to hit the subscribe button, and if you're already subscribed, do us a favor and hit the bell icon. This way you'll be notified whenever we post a new video. That's the best way to keep up with all of our uploads, and we usually try to upload 2 videos a day. And with the bell icon hit, you'll be notified whenever we do upload a video. As always, thanks for watching.